Hi, I'm Bruce Backa from NTP Software, and I'm going to talk to you about file data. So when I was a kid growing up, my mother was a pack rat. And her thing was, if we didn't use it anymore, went in the basement. If she didn't like it, went in the basement. Somebody gave her something she hated, went in the basement. Your file data is just like my mother's basement, and you have the same problems with your file data that my mother had with her basement, which is you run out of space, you need more infrastructure. She bought file cabinets, she bought storage racks, she bought hangers, and you get to the point where you have no idea what's in there. She would go down there and rummage around for at least an hour trying to find something. So let's talk about this as file data. And what I want to do is convince you that there are only three problems you can have. So if we take this conversation out of my mother's basement and into your file data, then there are really only three classes of problems that you can have. The first and most important relates to growth in and of itself. So you can get in a situation where backups take forever to complete. For example, I was talking to a larger organization, petabytes of data. It takes them 4.5 days to do a full backup, which they've committed to do every week. And that time frame is growing by half a day a quarter. There'll come a point next year where they simply can't do backups at all. The other problem you run into is with your infrastructure. So if you keep throwing more and more junk in there, you can't find things. Particularly in the financial services industry, the government has now gotten fairly aggressive at telling companies, look, it doesn't matter that you have this infrastructure problem and you can't find what we need. You have 90 days to get it or we're going to give you a fine. And several of the financials have been fined tens of millions of dollars for being unable to produce file data that everybody agreed they had. So the growth issue brings with it the necessity to make changes in your environment and start managing in new and different ways, and probably the need to partition and tier some of your data. The next thing we have to talk about in terms of managing your file data is cost. Okay. So we're all in a situation where growth, which is 20 to 40% in an office environment, or 100 to 300% in a big data environment, growth far exceeds the declining prices of the technology. Disk prices are only coming down 10 to 15% a year. And so that difference, which can be as little as 5%, but as much as hundreds of a percent, is financially ruinous. In every round where we add to our infrastructure and we add more storage for file data, we have to tier down cost. So finally, we need to talk about the fact that you probably want additional features in your environment. Today, everybody is subject to audit and compliance rules. And many people don't realize that compliance includes the mandatory requirement to delete things. So it can't just be a strategy of save things forever. Last year, we discovered with the public revelations about DoD and the FBI and others that most people's networks are compromised some or all of the time. And so if you want your file data to be safe, it now needs to be encrypted at rest as well as in motion. And finally, things like quotas are creeping back into the environment, both as limits to how much junk your users can put out in the environment, but more often as triggers to start moving stuff from tier 1 to tier 2, because the legacy paradigm of simply scanning the file system over and over again to find things that are old is beginning to fail us because of the first topic, growth. The environments are now too big to accommodate archiving scans on top of full backups and the other things you might be doing. We've talked about the three challenges that everybody has with their file data. Growth, and the artifacts of growth that give you challenges in how you're managing your file data. Cost, and the fact that disk prices aren't declining fast enough to compensate for the rates of growth. So you have to tier down your cost by changing your strategy in each round. And finally, the additional feature sets that you probably need to stay within compliance and manage your file data efficiently.